In 1889, the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce has been providing excellent service and building our community for 130 plus years. At nearly 1,200 members, the Fayetteville Chamber is one of the largest in the state of Arkansas, with members ranging from single-owner, home-based businesses to large-scale employers such as the University of Arkansas. The Fayetteville Chamber's mission is to serve as the leader and advocate for our members to promote a strong business climate and facilitate positive community interaction for continued economic development and enhanced quality of life for all residents. The purpose of the candidate forums is to open a dialogue between political candidates running for office and the voters of Fayetteville. We believe by providing the opportunity for candidates to share their vision for the future of Fayetteville, we will help the community become more informed and involved voters. The format and the rules will be as follows. The forum will last up to an hour. Each candidate will give a 3-minute opening and a 3-minute closing statement. I will have the candidates speak in the order that I see them here. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to respond to each question, and there will be no rebuttal after the responses. The first to answer each question will alternate between the candidates. I will be keeping time. Candidates, I will let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining to your response, and I'll audibly say time's up when your time is up. First, we will go to opening statements. Andrew, if you don't mind, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you very much, Taylor. It's a real honor to be here, and I'm grateful to be able to participate in this event with the Fayetteville Chamber today. My name is Andrew Thompson. I'm a pastor in Springdale, married to my wife, Emily. We have 3 children who are all in the public school system in Springdale, and very excited about this race and about the opportunity to potentially represent the residents of District 31 in the State Senate. There are really 3 things that I'm focusing on in this campaign, and the first of those, which I like to lead with, and I particularly want to lead with in a chamber event, which is the issue of economic development. I grew up in the Delta in East Arkansas, have lived here since 2015, and sometimes people ask me, say, what is it about what's going on in Washington, Benton counties, folks that live back where I'm from? And I said, I don't know. When my dad asked me that, I said, Dad, if we could just bottle it up and give everybody a sip of it back in East Arkansas, they would all be better for it, you know. So, but it's exciting what's going on up here. There are certain statistics that I like to lean on just to look at not only where District 31 is, but where it's headed. So, for example, if you draw on some data that the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission did in a study in 2020, they looked at demographic projections over the course of the next 25 years. And what they saw was that the city of Springdale itself was going to grow by somewhere around 78%. From a current, and I'll say this after the 2020 census, the population is around 87,000 people, and the projection is that that population is going to increase to just north of 154,000 people. By the way, the same study saw that Fayetteville would grow to about 150,000 people. So if you just think about between the 2 cities, you're going to have in excess of 300,000 residents. As a percentage of its current population, the cities of Elm Springs and Tawnytown, which are also in District 31, are expected to grow by an even faster clip than Springdale is. They have some room to expand. The city of Johnson, which is also in District 31, is not going to grow as fast, but that just has to do with it being sandwiched between the 2 larger cities of Springdale and Fayetteville. Now, because of that type of growth, because we know that that kind of demographic expansion is coming in, what it means is that planning is key, because infrastructure development and business development are not things that happen overnight. They have to be planned for well in advance.
30 seconds.
Thank you. What that means for us is that our roads and our highway expansions is incredibly important, and the funding for those things. What it means is that promoting a business-friendly environment where businesses, small businesses can come in, can be planted with a low barrier for entry and with a minimum of government regulation is incredibly important. Those are the types of things that will allow us to be the place where families want to come. They want to raise children, they want to go to church, they want to play youth sports, they want to grow their own businesses, and that kind of a rising tide will truly lift all boats. Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Paul for his opening statement. Paul, you'll have 3 minutes.
Taylor, thank you. I'm Paul Colvin, Jr., and first of all, I want to thank the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce for allowing me to be here. I am a Republican. I'm running for State Senate District 31. I was born in Springdale, Arkansas. Actually, Springdale Memorial Hospital is what it was named. Went to Lee Elementary, Central Junior High, and Springdale High School, and also graduate of John Brown University. I have 3 children, Zach, age 32, Chase, 27, and Allison, 11. You know, I've been a servant leader all my life. I'm a retired Springdale fire captain, as well as retired from Tawnytown Area Volunteer Fire Department. and also former mayor of the city of Town for 7 years. Served on several committees throughout the region, from Northwest Regional Planning that Andrew mentioned to Boston Mountain Solid Waste, integral part of Northwest Washington County Ambulance Authority. Matter of fact, I sat as vice chair on that one. Also, twice I was president of the Arkansas Auctioneers Association, a member of the National Auctioneers Association, and also a proud member of Springdale Kiwanis as well. I agree that economic development is a part of our big platform, and also infrastructure. Infrastructure doesn't only include our roads. I mean, we've been working on the 612 bypass for now 20 years. Philip Taldo, that's highway commissioner, I speak with him on a regular basis, and he absolutely needs help with infrastructure. Matter of fact, we have property owners right now that they have flags in their yard but haven't been offered anything for their property yet to get this project started and up off the ground. We're sending a large amount of money down to Little Rock and only getting about 10% of it back up here in our highways. I worked with several mayors while mayor, designing the Highway 112 expansion, and we've yet to see anything happen. They said it's going to start in 2023. Maybe. We're not holding our breath, but we'll see. But more importantly, when it comes to infrastructure and expansion, we're seeing it in the last 2 days. I've been very vocal about the state releasing the hazardous mitigation packet that Washington County, that John Luther and his team worked so hard to get over there, because right now we're seeing flooding all across our great state and here in Northwest Arkansas. Meanwhile, Northwest Regional Planning, that I sit on the board for, has plans for Washington County and Benton County to have drainage systems built to help the flooding. And more importantly, when you talk about expansion, developers are losing 10% of their developments because they have to put in detention ponds. If we had these created, they would get back the 10% and also be able to reduce the price of housing. So again, I thank you for allowing me to be here and to respond to you here today.
Thank you, sir. We will now stick with you for our first question. First question will be, why did you decide to run for this position?
The most important reason I decided to run for this position was to be a voice for the citizens of District 31 and also for the great state of Arkansas. We live in one of the best states in the Union. People travel from all over the world to come see the Ozarks. And for me, there is a lot going on in Little Rock that I think is wrong. We're spending lots and lots of money down in Little Rock today on frivolous bills that never go nowhere. As a matter of fact, most of the bills presented lay there on the floor. I think something needs to be done. We need to quit spending money talking about mask mandates, for example. I mean, people today, as we walk the streets, their number one concern right now is not mask mandates. Their number one concern today is, how do I feed my family? Inflation is key. I mean, we've had more people tell us the price of a gallon of milk with every door that we stop at. They want to know how they go back to work. Our intention is to try to put people back to work, putting stimulus packages together for business owners to try to get people back into the workforce to help our economy. Instead, we still have meetings that go down to Little Rock. Legislators travel each and every week down there, when during the COVID pandemic, we created this thing called Zoom and had meeting after meeting after meeting. And we want to talk about in the Republican Party about having smaller business or smaller government, right? But why are we paying more people in per diems that are legislators than we are paying them in salaries? You can start there by reducing government expenses and start spending. Just as I read this last week, we have a $1 billion surplus in the great state of Arkansas. If we have $1 billion in our account, why are we not using it to help our economy? Why are we not building these roads that we're talking about? Why are we not helping the single mothers that yet we want to talk about in the Republican Party about abortion? Well, I'm 100% pro-life. As a Springdale fireman, I protected the born and the unborn. But why are we not doing more for those ladies that decided to have the children? Putting more money, more effort into the resources that help families that have kids that have disabilities that they can't find help with. So that's why I'm running with a host of many other things that we've had lots of concerns and people asking about at the state level.
Thank you, sir. Andrew, we'll now go to you for the same question. Why did you decide to run for this position?
Public service is really in my family's background. My father was a local office holder in Paragould, where I grew up for most of my childhood, and so that kind of attention to the public good has been something that was really kind of bred into me from a very early age. when my family and I moved up here several years ago, the way that I tell people, so I'm a pastor, okay? So if I use a biblical image or two, please forgive me. But my wife and I, within a couple of months of moving here, felt a little bit like when Abraham and Sarah got to the land of Canaan, and that was where we believed that we were where God wanted us to be. And at that time, I started thinking about my calling here in Springdale and in the Northwest Arkansas region as not just a calling to serve a church community, but to serve God's entire community. And I really believe that you can serve the kingdom of God both within the church and also out in the world. And so that changed the involvements and the things that I began to commit myself to. And when I started doing work with the Springdale Police Department on an annual basis, when I started doing work with Mayor Doug Sprouse on the planning committee for the Springdale Mayor's Prayer Breakfast each year, when I accepted a position on the board of directors for the United Way of Northwest Arkansas, where I'm currently serving as the vice chair, I just started getting involved more in a community sense than I ever really had been. And I started getting interested, for the sake of my own children, who are now 9 years old, and 11 years old, I started thinking about what it meant to really invest in their future. And the need to have people down in Little Rock representing our community who really have the kind of foresight and willingness to be creative and to imagine the kind of future that our children can have in the next generation. To be honest, Taylor, one of the things that's very troubling to me is that we have a lot of legislators down in Little Rock who get themselves elected and are mostly interested in maintaining their own power. In fact, they will do anything and they will say anything to try to ensure that they get elected the next time around. One of my opponents in this race that we're in right now, and it's not Mr. Colvin to my left, has followed a strategy in Little Rock of trying to deny the citizens of Arkansas the right to vote on their own future. Some of our listeners today may remember that there was an issue that came before the legislature a couple of years ago where they had the opportunity to refer highway funding. It's issue number one on the ballot to the people of the state of Arkansas. My opponent was vociferously opposed to giving the citizens of Arkansas the ability to decide for themselves whether or not the roads and the highways of Arkansas would continue to be funded. Fortunately, he and his cohorts were defeated in that attempt. The people of Arkansas, in their wisdom, decided that we do need to continue to fund our roads and our highways. But if he had been successful, the results for the citizens of Arkansas, and most particularly District 31, would have been catastrophic.
Final thoughts?
I will take a different approach to leadership in Little Rock. I will actually be a voice for the people, not a voice that tries to block the people and their interests. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll stay with you on this next question. Describe your experience working within your community. What is your leadership style?
So I would, in my own community, I'm serving First United Methodist Church in downtown Springdale. And some people ask me, wouldn't it be helpful if you had business experience getting into politics? And the way that I answer that is, if you spent some time inside of the church that I serve, you'd see that it kind of functions like a business in some ways. We have a $2.1 million budget that, as the senior pastor of the church, I'm responsible for overseeing. Between the ministry side of our church and the education side of our church, which includes a part-time preschool and a full-time daycare, we have over 40 employees. And because of that, a lot of what I do, in addition to preaching on Sunday morning and to taking care of my flock, a lot of what I'm doing is managing a budget and overseeing staff. And what that means is that I have to have a managerial approach to leadership. If I didn't, then our congregation wouldn't be equipped to carry out the mission that we believe that God has given us in the world. But in addition to those 40-plus employees that we have, of course, we have hundreds of volunteers that help to fuel and to lead the ministry of our church. And that means that the leadership is involved not just a few dozen, but with several hundred people within a given week or within a given month of what we're doing as a church. And so what I try to do as a leader is I try to take a managerial approach that includes all voices at the table and gives everyone that is a member of our congregation or is a stakeholder in one of our ministries out in the community a voice and a way to participate. But I also, as the senior pastor of the church, I try to provide vision, thinking about what needs to come, not next week, but 6 months from now, next year, or 5 years from now, to help to prepare all the members of our congregation and all of our stakeholders for where we believe that God's calling us.
Thank you. Paul, we will now go to you for this next question. Describe your experience working within your community. What is your leadership style?
Well, Taylor, thank you for the question. First and foremost, I think my leadership style is that of a servant leader. In the city of Tawnytown and what we've done at the Springdale Fire Department and through the businesses that I've managed, I've tried to listen as much as I can to the employees and the citizens and the owners of other businesses. Matter of fact, my degree is in organizational leadership, John Brown University. And you have to reach out to the people and hear what they want. Yes, there's a lot of politicians that go down to Little Rock and have set their own agendas of what they want to see get passed and what they want to see get done. But as mayor of the city of Tawnytown, I felt like it was important that I reach out to not only the citizens but the business owners and find an equal balance between each, because you can't have one without the other. Specifically, we talk about lowering taxes. I come from an era of Reaganomics, if you will. Ronald Reagan was one of my most favorite presidents. The only issue that you had with Reaganomics was you could lower taxes, but you also had to reduce government at the same time. And that's what we're not doing in the state of Arkansas right now, is reduction in our government. Yes, I think Asa Hutchinson has done a great job with consolidating down to, I think, 15 houses, but there could be more done. I mean, we are number one in licensure in the state of Arkansas. You have to have a license to groom dog hair, among other licensures that you must carry. So we need to take a harder look at that as far as reducing the amount of licensure. Not that I'm against licensing. I'm a licensed auctioneer, licensed real estate broker, and there are some industries in which it's a requirement and a need for licensures and CEs, but we need to take a hard look at that so we can reduce some of the government spending in that aspect. Also, reduction of taxes. In the city of Tawnytown, one of the things that I'm very, very proud of is our millage rate in Tawnytown is 3.5%. And you look around at the other cities surrounding us, and they're all at 5% mills. So, that is one of the reasons I feel like that while as mayor, my city was voted, well, it wasn't even voted, it was accurate numbers. We were the largest growing small town for 2 years running before COVID hit. Matter of fact, we'd probably been for the next 3 or 4 had we not had just a little bit of a shutdown. But we've tried to encourage development within our city. We increased our population by the census tract. We doubled, but in reality, we actually tripled our population if you go back and take a look at it. Not to mention, our property values in Tawnytown from when I took over the reins as mayor have went up 300%. And that gets back to economic development and growth within your city. We added roads, we added streets, and we applied for all kinds of grants to build our new city hall, among other things. So, I think working together with people and working across the aisle, because my intention is when we go into Little Rock that I don't wear my R hat. My R hat comes off, and we work for the citizens of District 31.
Thank you, sir. We'll now go to the next question. We'll stay with you. What do you believe to be the largest challenge facing your district in the next 2 years?
It's obvious. Andrew and I both, I think, agree. Growth and dealing with growth. As a small town mayor, there are 2 types of cities, those that are dying and those that are growing. And you have to be able to tackle the challenges of growth. I mean, when you're having 30 people a day moving into Northwest Arkansas, where do you put them? How do you find adequate housing for them? We talk about homes that are affordable housing. Well, right now, affordable housing is $275,000 for affordable housing in Northwest Arkansas, when the reality of the situation is the people that are actually doing the work are still only making on average $13, $14 an hour. I mean, if you look up right now in Northwest Arkansas, Benton County, Washington County, for a family of 2, it takes $78,000 a year to survive. So how do these families do that? How do they afford to buy a home? That's why we really need to work on our infrastructure. We need to work on our drainage so developers get back 10% of their property. We need to make sure that we're doing what we can for the single mothers out there that are having these children and then still trying to survive at the end of the day. I mean, when you sit and look at $300 a week for daycare, and you have to make the determination, because in Springdale, it's not mandatory that they pick your kids up and go to school. So we have talked to people that have had kids that have missed school 3, 4, 5 days because there's no bus drivers. You know, one of the first things I intend to do when I get to Little Rock is just what Mr. Rollins said from Springdale School Systems. I want them to exempt firemen and police officers from CDL testing. Because as a fireman, I didn't have to take a CDL test to drive a $2 million ladder truck. And who would you rather have on a school bus? A fireman, a police officer, or somebody that could pass a test? So that's a very simple thing that we could do to help the school systems and also help our firemen and our police officers make a paycheck. I mean, some of the things I think are going on in Little Rock seem simple to me. But my biggest intent when I go down there is I'm pretty outspoken, and I'm pretty loud sometimes. And my intent is to knock on a lot of doors and ask the questions why. And there may be reasons for why, but the public is not hearing that. They're not being told, why is the roads not done? The public's not being told, why is a stoplight that this mayor got a $450,000 grant from almost 4 years ago not been built? Why is it that we don't have school bus drivers right now? Why is it a gallon of milk, a poke of bread, and a dozen eggs cost $4.50 2 years ago, but yet today it costs $12? Why is that? So my intent is to ask the questions of why and then to respond to my constituents with the answers why. And if there's not a good why, then we need to change it. We need to fix it. We can't rely on just saying what we're going to do or what we're about or what we're for, because as you can tell in Tawnytown, I was told I couldn't build a city hall. I was told I couldn't be mayor of Tawnytown. I was told I couldn't build a 9-mile water line to get off Springdale water system and have a water system of our own. I'm a doer. That's what I do. I go to work every day. I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and go to bed at midnight, and I get up thinking, how do I help the citizens of District 31? And that is my intent.
Thank you. Andrew, we'll now go to you for the same question.
Thank you, Taylor. Can you repeat the question?
Yes, yes.
So I know how you phrased it.
What do you believe to be the largest challenge facing your district in the next 2 years?
Okay. So, Taylor, I would describe that with 2 words, and I think this is twin sides of the same coin, and that is economics and education. I think that is the biggest challenge that's facing District 31 over the course of the next 2 years. I had 2 meetings yesterday that were very eye-opening to me. One of them was with Patsy Christie at the Planning Commission in downtown Springdale, and then the other one was a meeting with the employees who work out at Sharp's Quarry, who work for APAC out at Sharp's Quarry. That's just to the west of Interstate 49. It was interesting because the meetings were not intended to coincide on the same day or to be about the same topics, but they ended up being. And the one that I had downtown at the Planning Commission, I would say, is about strategy for development, specifically infrastructure development over the coming years. And when I was out at Sharp's Quarry with those employees, that was really about execution. And so I got to hear about the planning, and I got to hear about how the planning is turning into doing. If you were to hover over the city of Springdale at 5 o'clock at the end of the workday, what you would see is that there are certain choke points that are happening as people are trying to get home from work that are really causing log jams. And one of the most worrisome images that I heard from someone recently is the prospect of Northwest Arkansas turning into a miniature version of Southern California. We don't want that to happen. And it's why projects like the expansion of Highway 112 from Tawnytown out to Cave Springs, it's why the completion of the 412 bypass around Springdale, it's why the extension of Jean George Boulevard heading south towards Johnson and Fayetteville, it's why the new overpass that will extend from Harbor Avenue across I-49 to connect with Emma, it's why all of these things are so important, because we cannot get to the point where we have literal kind of log jams that are happening when people are trying to get their children to school in the morning, when they're trying to get to work, when they're trying to get to the grocery store. And so that kind of development is extremely important, and we have to be planning for it. We have to be planning for it now for what's coming a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades from now. Part of that matches up with education, which is the flip side of the coin. And that's because we need to have the people in place that are going to help this kind of economic development happen. I met with Dr. Jim Rollins at the Northwest Technical Institute the other day, and we were talking about some of the challenges with workforce development with the kinds of jobs that we need in order to make manufacturing happen, that we need to make the medical professions happen.
30 seconds.
Some of our listeners might be surprised to know there are, right now in Northwest Arkansas, there are 2,700 plus jobs open from the RN level and below in our hospitals and our doctors' clinics. I have a friend who has a manufacturing company in Springdale who has a permanent sign out front that says that he's hiring welders because he doesn't have enough people to fill the jobs that he has. We need to be focusing on NWTI. We need to be focusing on NWAC. We need to be focusing on the types of programs at the high school level that are preparing people not just to go to a four-year college or university, but are preparing people to go into the workforce in specialized and skilled trades. If we're not keeping our eye on the ball with those types of things right now, then we're going to be in for a world of hurt. We've got to stop the legislative navel-gazing in Little Rock. We need state senators and representatives who are going to be focusing on the kind of policy making that's actually going to move District 31 forward.
Thank you. We'll stay with you on this next question. Where do you see your district after your term has ended? What are your personal goals?
After
After your next term has ended, where do you see the district, and
Okay.
what are kind of your goals for your candidacy?
The reason I hesitated is because of where we are after the 2020 census. It's not even clear how long the term's going to be. There will be some senators who will draw a 2-year term. There will be some senators who will draw a 4-year term. So, frankly, things are moving so fast in Northwest Arkansas. You know, where we are in 2024 and where we are in 2026, those could be some very different places. But what I expect is that the district is going to continue to develop. You know, one of the things that is the most important to me is the issue of education. The Springdale School District is the largest school district in the state of Arkansas. We have around 23,000 students. We have 3 high schools. Those high schools don't all look the same. Harbor High School and Springdale High School have a conventional approach to education. The School for Innovation has a different approach to innovation, or a different approach to education and to learning, and that is to meet the needs of students. In addition to the Springdale School District, of course, we have Shiloh Christian Academy. We have a number of different charter schools that are operating. We have a lot of parents who find that homeschooling is the best approach to the way that they need to prepare their children as they're growing through those crucial K through 12 years. What I anticipate is that the sheer number of individuals who are in District 31, whether it's 2 years from now or whether it's 4 years from now, is going to be greatly in excess of what it is today. And what that means is that we need to be planning out education infrastructure as well. I say this as someone who's not only interested in it from a policy perspective, I'm interested in it from a personal perspective. I have 3 children. They're all elementary school age right now, but our oldest daughter, Alice, is going to be going to middle school next year. And I am very concerned that we need the right kind of educational outcomes for our children. We need to be thinking not only about where we are right now, but we need to be thinking about where our children are going to be in the future. And that means that issues like planning by the millage rate in Springdale, which is one of the lowest in all of the major school districts in Northwest Arkansas. It means that issues like school choice that are very important to parents right now, that educational policy is something that we are going to have to be focused on at every level in the course of the next 2 years or the next 4 years, because where we're going to be at the end of whatever that term looks like moving forward is going to be a district that is larger, a district that has a larger economy, a district that has a larger population base, and because of that, a district that has more children, and that means we're going to need more investment for the future.
Thank you. Paul, we'll now go to you for the same question. Where do you see your district after your term has ended? What are your personal goals?
Well, you know, me personally, I truly believe in that whatever you do or whatever you attempt to do, that you leave it better than when you found it. Serving as mayor again, I took over a budget that was severely in the red, and now after 7 years, it's sitting on a multi-million-dollar budget, sitting in the city of Tawnytown. You know, the word conservative has been thrown around a lot, especially if you're running as a Republican. But I think that as far as my candidacy, I'm fiscally conservative, most importantly, because I found that in small towns across America, just like mine, you can't live off of property tax alone. Most of the little small towns that you come to don't even have enough convenience stores and enough grocery stores to even collect enough sales tax to do a lot with. We operated with a budget of about $2.2 million this last year that I served as mayor, and you're looking at about $104, $1.5 million just in salaries alone. You know, when you even start looking at all the employees that are working right now trying to keep their jobs, they're not paid enough. I mean, even the state, RDOT, when I spoke to them, you know, the state's not doing anything to give those people increases in their wages. Yeah, you're seeing increases even at the county level that they're paying the upper echelon more, but the people that are actually doing the work in the middle are not getting paid more. And those are the people that actually come in, day out, and make sure that your roads are cleared when there's an ice storm, that the trees are removed when there's wind damage, and also make sure that you're saved from water when you traverse an area that may be too deep for you to get across. So we need to put more effort into trying to pay those employees and get their wages increased to where they can survive. You know, for me, leaving something better than when you found it is goal number one at the end of the day. And I agree with Andrew that education is a must. I mean, when I went to Central Junior High and I went to Springdale High School, shop was mandatory. Home economics was mandatory. You have kids coming out of high school today that don't know how to balance their checkbook. You can go to Burger King or any convenience store, McDonald's. I'm not trying to advertise for anybody, but when's the last time you had anybody count change back to you? You know, the simple things in school are not being taught anymore. They're teaching a lot of stuff that's a little bit out of bounds, in my opinion, when they need to be working on the basics. We got kids coming out and don't know which end of the hammer to hold. You know, Mike Rowe for Dirty Jobs, if you look at some of the foundations that he supports with his scholarships for technical trade, is where we need to be putting our money in. Andrew, I agree 100% that if we don't start raising our children and getting them, putting them ready, work ready into the workforce, I'm a baby boomer. 10 years from now, I may be gone. And where is our world then? Who's going to build our houses? Who's going to be our plumbers? Who's going to be our electricians? The doctors and lawyers of the future are our electricians and our plumbers. They're already getting the pay for it, $150 just to come and look at your heat and air. I mean, you're having kids that could come out of high school that are making what 4-year college level students are making. And we need to put more intention at the state level of funding those programs that better assist those kids and other organizations to allow them to hire them. We just did a grading of people running the scholarship program, BIT, at Springdale High School to give one scholarship out of 20 kids. Tyson should be hiring those kids today because they're way smarter than we are. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll stay with you on this next question. What kind of economic development projects do you hope your district will take on in the next year?
Oh, lands. Everything. You know, we really need to get our corridors built, the 612 going all the way across Springdale. I mean, last I heard it was supposed to go all the way to Memphis. We haven't even got it to Tawnytown yet. Highway 112 that Doug Sprouse, the mayor of Elm Springs, and I both worked on designing roundabouts and stoplights have not even been looked at yet. Meanwhile, as mayor of a town, I built a $1.7 million road just to give a parallel off of 412 to get the traffic off of 412 to assist, only to be told now that they're going to redesign my intersection because they're going to put a roundabout in that they have known about for 6 years because I had to get the plans submitted to them to get the permit out onto Highway 112. I mean, it sure seems like to me in Little Rock that there's a big disconnect between Northwest Arkansas and Little Rock. Now, I don't know when you go in there to talk to the good folks at RDOT that why they can't tell you what's going on in Little Rock and vice versa. So I don't know what the disconnect is, but I'm planning on asking the question once I get down there. I mean, we're wasting a whole lot of time, a whole lot of money. I mean, I'm sure Andrew can attest. It seems like we're spending more time picking signs up out of right-of-ways than picking the trash up or building roads. Now, explain to me why it is that we can't get a road built, we can't get intersections built. Why is it that small towns in America, just like my town that has 412, which is a major artery into this state, that my town has to pay for the stoplights on it? Why did it cost my town $86,000 to put in a turn lane on Highway 112 and 412 when that is the biggest traffic congestion area in Northwest Arkansas? Answer that riddle why. Tell me why. Why are my citizens have to pay for stuff that they're being taxed on right now? It doesn't make sense to me. Like I said, I'm pretty simple. If you can explain the reasons why to me, I'll readily admit that I'm wrong if I'm wrong. But I've yet to have anybody explain to me. You know, we have the landfill in our area that takes in all the trash from Northwest Arkansas. And I fielded all the complaints for that. And people asking, why do you have a landfill in Tinytown? Well, I'll tell you why we have a landfill in Tinytown. Because we got a whole lot of people living here. And the economic impact that the landfill has on this community. If we didn't have a landfill in our community, then how much would our trash cost? Now, we can do anything we want to try to shut down a landfill or try to move it, but that's all great and grand. I am the first mayor in the history of Tinytown that created 9 pages of legislation governing the landfill to make sure that their track out isn't carried to 412, to make sure that the
30
noise wasn't going on, make sure that pine trees are trying to cover it up. You know, meanwhile, working with Boston Mountain Solid Waste to ensure that your trash bill does not go up here in the great city of Fayetteville. So again, there's a lot of questions that need to be asked down there, and maybe there's simple explanations for it. But I've yet to have anybody explain it, particularly one of the gentlemen that is running in this race against me that sits on the environmental board that can't answer those questions for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew, we'll go to you for the same question. What kind of economic development projects do you hope your district will take on in the next year?
Well, Paul, the first thing I would say is you make me glad I'm not running for mayor. Sometimes I think of being a pastor as a difficult job, and I think being a mayor of a small town might be the most difficult job that there is out there. You know, I'll answer this question, Taylor, from the perspective of where I live and work every day, and that's in downtown Springdale. You know, when I got here several years ago, one of the things that you would hear a lot in Springdale is that we were lagging behind the other cities in Northwest Arkansas, that Rogers and Bentonville and Fayetteville were ahead of us economically and from the standpoint of attracting tourism and events and things of that nature. That may well have been true, but one of the things for me that has been the most exciting is to see the way that Springdale has been almost rabidly playing catch-up over the course of the past 7+ years. Some of the things that are happening right now in downtown Springdale are really exciting, and I would just encourage anybody to take a drive or a walk down Emma Avenue if you haven't spent any time in downtown Springdale lately. There's a great deal of development that's going on. There are new buildings that are coming up. There are new events that are happening. Some of that has been pushed by the municipal government. A lot of it has been pushed by the Downtown Springdale Alliance. Other parts of it have been pushed simply by creative and artistic and entrepreneurial people who are creating businesses and are getting events together that are happening down there. One of the ways that we can continue to advance that sort of thing is by simply giving people freedom. You know, I was talking to a downtown Springdale business owner just the other day, and he had come from a different city in Northwest Arkansas. I won't talk about which one it is, but he had come to Springdale because of the reputation that Springdale has as a conservative city government. And after he planted his business in downtown Springdale, he told me the story about how different it was to apply for the kind of licenses that he needed in order to be able to open a business in Springdale and to operate that business. And he was comparing Springdale favorably with other places that he has started projects in Northwest Arkansas where the red tape and the regulations are simply a lot more onerous and a lot more difficult to navigate. Springdale, by reputation, has a reputation as an extremely business-friendly place to come and to do work and to be an entrepreneur and to plant and to grow a small business. You know, the thing about it in Springdale, and I would say throughout District 31 is
30 seconds.
There's no reason for us ever to raise taxes. We don't need to raise taxes. What we need to do is we need to add businesses. We need to add economic development. We need to add people. When you add people, what happens is property values go up. Sales tax revenue increases. You can give people a low regulation, low tax environment and unleash the power of the market and unleash the power of individual liberty and unleash the power of entrepreneurship to allow people to do the kind of work that will carry not only Springdale, but Elm Springs, Johnson, and Tinytown forward, all of District 31. So what I want to see is I want to see more downtown development in Springdale. I want to see more creative and entrepreneurial activity on the part of people, and I want to see our economy and our community grow as a result.
Thank you. This time we'll turn it over to the audience to see if they have any questions before going to our closing statements. Feel free to raise your hand if you have a question.
Gentlemen, I've asked every candidate in any of these forums to have this question. there are 100 members of the House and there are 35 members of the Senate. And without coalitions, you don't get much done. And coalitions generally come together around common interest, not always around regions. What are your plans or what are your thoughts about being a coalition builder in Little Rock to get things done for the state of Arkansas and also to get things done for Northwest Arkansas, particularly District 31?
Andrew, we'll start with you.
Well, one of the things that I would mention is that I think that my work and my background as a pastor is actually invaluable in that sort of thing. If you are in ministry and if you serve a congregation, as I do, the first thing that you learn about leadership is that leadership is about listening. And if you're not willing to listen, you're not going to be a very effective leader. In my own ministry and in the practice of my profession, the thing that I try to do as a leader is to be a listener first. And I believe that in terms of building a coalition or in terms of building relationships, that listening is absolutely key. I also believe that the people of Arkansas, and I don't just mean District 31, and I don't just mean Northwest Arkansas as a region, I mean the people of the state of Arkansas have 85 to 90% of things in common. We all want the same thing. We want to see our economy grow. We want to see our schools improve. We want to see people have opportunity. We want to see our children have a better future than the one that we had when we grew up. And what that means is that we need to go down both on the House side and then the Senate side. We need to be focusing on things that will improve the lives of all Arkansans. One of the things that's the most troubling to me is the issue of legislative navel-gazing, focusing on issues that are niche issues that are not broadly popular and applicable to a wide swath of the population. And also the issue of legislators who get in power and then they doggedly cling to power by any means necessary through lies, through distortions, and through focusing on dividing people rather than uniting people. I want to go down and be a representative for all the people, and that means the entire 86,000 people of District 31. In order to do that, you need to build coalitions, you need to be a good listener, and you need to focus on the types of issues that are applicable and relevant to the entirety of the state, and most especially the people of the district that you're representing.
Thank you, sir. Paul, if you need Mr. Clark to repeat the question.
No, I think I got it. You know, first and foremost, I think, like I said earlier, when you walk into the House, you're required to be there to take your hat off. You're not there to be a Republican, an independent, or a Democrat. You're there to vote on what's right for the citizens. And I know as mayor and working in my individual businesses and my auction company that, you know, it seems like everything's a 51 to 49 split, and that can flip with every topic. You know, the biggest thing about being a legislator or a leader is the ability to influence people. There are more deals cut in hallways in Little Rock than there are inside the chamber. And you got to have the ability to work with one another. You got to have the ability to listen to one another. And you absolutely have to have the ability to influence when you're working with them and they're working with you. You know, one thing I can say about our campaign is that we give 110%. And we work off the principles that I used to work off of when I coached Little League Baseball for 9 years. That you give 110%, you never beat yourself, and you always believe. So you have to go into this fight in Little Rock, giving 110% every day with your goal in mind of working for District 31 and working really for what's best for the state of Arkansas. And don't repeat mistakes that you've already seen repeated for the last several years in Little Rock. And then you always have to go into it with the belief that, you know, that you believe in yourself, you believe in Almighty God, and you believe in the ability and the will of the people when it comes to what's right for the citizens of Arkansas. So again, our intent is to speak for the voice of the citizens of District 31 as well as everybody here in Arkansas. Now, I'm a realist, and I know that to get things done in Little Rock that you're going to have to give a whole lot to get a little. And throughout the last 8 weeks, as we've been walking, we've also been prioritizing what are we going to do first when we get to Little Rock? What are we going to do second when we get to Little Rock? And we have to build upon that, because I know as a new member of the Senate that I may not be listened to in my first year. But hopefully when I walk out of there after 4 years, they will have heard what Paul Colvin has to say. So again, we're going to work for our citizens, not just in District 31, but for the entire state. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, at this moment, do we have any final questions before we go to closing statements? I think we're good. All right. Paul, we will start with you, and Andrew, we will have you close.
Well, again, I feel like this race is about choices. It's giving people the choice of whether or not to pay higher taxes or not. You know, in Tawnytown, every tax issue that came up before us was voted on by the people of Tawnytown. We did raise the millage just a little bit in my first year because we were at 2.5% and we weren't making it. We were in the red. We had to find some answers to be able to get through it. But since then, we didn't raise any taxes unless we put it before our citizens to vote on, and it was their choice of whether or not to vote or not vote. You know, one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is franchise fees. That's a real easy tax to raise on people. You reach out to your telephone companies, you reach out to your internet providers, and you can raise millage. Well, I can honestly tell you, or not millage, but franchise taxes, we didn't raise a single franchise tax while I was mayor in Tawnytown because there are people that are on stabilized incomes that don't get that extra dollar. So we tried to do things that when we have tourists come into town, that the tourists paid for that tax and not the citizens of Tawnytown. You know, one of the big things that we can do, we already mentioned today that we have $1 billion surplus in the great state of Arkansas. You know, why hasn't it been thought about that we want to always applaud the red and blue? And I absolutely 100% support the red and blue. I'm a retired Springdale Fire Department captain. I cannot not support the red. And working as a mayor, you're the chief justice of your town, so the blue is heavy on my heart as well. Why are we not looking at, like other states have looked at, not charging sales tax for retirement on their lofty retirement to help those people? And more importantly, working on LOFI, which is a retirement program for the spousal benefits. Because trust me, these firefighters and police officers' families that have put up with them being gone for days on end, and then they pass away after they retire, and their spouse only gets half of that retirement, that don't sound right to me. You know, same way with our veterans. We can sit here and tout as Republicans that we support our veterans. Well, I visited the affairs office here in Fayetteville, and he asked me a real crazy question, I thought. He said, define a veteran to me. I thought. He said, because benefits benefit people that have been in there 28 years or they've been injured. Well, to me, a veteran is a young man or a young woman that puts their name on the dotted line that day. They're a veteran. When they get sent off overseas to fight whatever war they were fighting in, they are a veteran that day. And we need to work on benefits that support them. Yeah, they get the GI Bill, but how about we give them a schooling of technical trade? Let them learn something else besides a 4-year college.
Final thoughts?
Again, you have a choice. In this election, I can honestly tell you that I am the only candidate running that has not had any PAC funding, nor have I asked for any PAC funding. I was at an event the other night that said, follow the money. Folks, it's real simple. Go follow the money. I've supported my campaign at least 90-95% with the exception of some family member and friends that have helped supported me. The other candidates in this race, I don't know. You follow the money, you check it out. I'm paying for my part, my ticket to ride. Is everybody else? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Last, we'll go to Andrew for his closing statement. You have 3 minutes.
There are 3 things that the residents of District 31 want to know about, what they want their representative to focus on, and that they're interested in. The first one is the issue of economic development, and I've already spoken on that. The second one is the issue of education. I had the opportunity to speak a little bit on that. The third one is the safety of our streets and support of law enforcement, which I haven't said as much about. But on that third one, we have rising rates of crime in the state of Arkansas. As a matter of fact, the state of Arkansas, statewide, the rising rate of crime is faster than that in the nation as a whole. And we've seen that over the past few years. It's very troubling. When I was growing up in Paragould, I was able to ride my bicycle on the streets, and my mom would turn me out all day long and then ring the dinner bell, and I'd come home in the evening. Those are the kind of streets that I want my children to grow up on in Springdale. And so we need to be focusing on the safety of our streets. We need to be expanding the capacity of our jails and prisons to fix our broken parole system so that we aren't letting violent criminals out early when they still need to be incarcerated and serve their sentences. And we need to be supporting our first responders and most especially our law enforcement so that we can keep the ranks of the men and women in blue filled and make sure that we have enough patrolmen on the streets in order to keep streets safe and most especially to protect our children. As Paul said, this is an election where you have a choice. I'm a family man. I'm married to my wife, Emily. We have 3 school-aged children. When you are raising kids, you are not planning for today. You're planning for the future because you're thinking about what your children are going to need, not today, but what they're going to need a year, 5 years, and 10 years from now. I want to think in a foresighted way and a future-oriented way for the needs of the residents of District 31. If you call me on the phone, I'll actually take your call. If you invite me to a candidate forum, I'll actually show up. If you have questions for me, I'll answer them. I will be a representative who is responsive to the people, and I am the right choice for the residents and the voters of District 31. I want to ask for your vote.
Thank you, sir. And thank you to both of you. Round of applause for our candidates for taking time out of their day to join us here tonight for our forum here at the Fayetteville Public Library. We're finished for the first forum. We do have another forum here in just a moment at 3 o'clock, so we will go ahead and take a short intermission. But until then, thanks for coming out, and we appreciate everyone's participation. We appreciate it. This is our second forum for tonight for District 35. My name is Taylor Shelton. I am the Chief Economic Development Officer for the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce and your moderator for this evening's forum. Founded in 1889, the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce has been providing excellent service and building our community for 130 plus years. At nearly 1,200 members, the Fayetteville Chamber is one of the largest in the state of Arkansas, with members ranging from single-owner, home-based businesses to large-scale employers such as the University of Arkansas. The Fayetteville Chamber's mission is to serve as the leader and advocate for our members to promote a strong business climate and facilitate positive community interaction for continued economic development and enhanced quality of life for all residents. The purpose of the candidate forums is to open a dialogue between political candidates running for office and the voters of Fayetteville. We believe by providing an opportunity for the candidates to share their vision for the future of Fayetteville, we will help the community become more informed and involved voters. The rules and the format will be as follows. The forum will last up to 1 hour. Each candidate will give a 3-minute opening and a 3-minute closing statements. I'll reverse the orders as they speak in the intro. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to respond to each question. There will be no rebuttals after the responses. The first to answer each question will alternate between the candidates. Candidates, I will be keeping time. I will let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining in your response, and I will ask you for your final thoughts when your time is up. First, we will go to opening statements. Tyler, we'll start with you.
All right. Do I need to speak into this here?
If you could.
Okay. All right. Say something. Hello. My name is Tyler Dees, and I'm from Silent Springs. My wife and I, Megan, we met at John Brown University, and where I graduated from there and played basketball there. And I jokingly say I feel like I was the best under 6 foot white average athlete white guard in the country. And but you know we met there. We still live in Silent Springs. We've got 3 kids, and absolutely love this area. And been serving here for a while. I work for Simmons Foods. I lead our retail sales team, and I've been selling something to Walmart for about 15 years and so you know we've been in this community for a long time, and so Megan and I started praying about serving in this community. About 7 or 8 years ago, we started saying, Lord, it seems very intentional that you've got us called to this area. And we love this area. And we were saying no to other jobs and different things. And we just said, God, it seems intentional. We don't want to miss why. And so he put it on our heart to just have a heart of service. And so that led to things where served on our Silent Springs Chamber of Commerce board and as the chair of our board of directors. Currently serve on the board of directors for the Children Advocacy Center and of Western Benton County. And so there's a heart for serving our kids and our community. I've coached 27 youth teams in the last 6 years, chasing gyms and balls everywhere. And I jokingly tell folks, too, that, you know, if I can handle parents and their kids' playing time, I think I can handle lobbyists in Little Rock. And so just a heart for service. Well, people in our church that we were serving in, people we've served in the community, approached us, said, Tyler, you ever thought about politics? And so we just started praying about that. And that's how we got here. God put this awesome piece about this next thing to serve in our community. And so I'm excited about that. As preparing for this, I've been loving jumping into the Arkansas State Constitution and seeing how I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated to see how a Republican-led state has some of the highest tax rates in the country. And so I am excited to lead and fight for conservative values. Those are the things that fire me up. These are the things I hear when I go talk to the people in our district, that they're frustrated. They're frustrated that we don't want to, here's what's going on. We don't want to limit our business growth. We want to limit our government growth. And that's what I want to fight for us and represent. It would be an honor to make sure that I be that representation for us over in Little Rock. Remind Little Rock that they work for us, and not the other way around. When you read the Arkansas State Constitution, you hear the very first part, we the people of the state of Arkansas, grateful to the God Almighty for the right to choose our own government. We've lost that tone and culture. And I want to remind Little Rock that they work for us and not the other way around.
Thank you, sir. We'll go down the line here. We'll go to Jeff next for his opening statement. You'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Steve, for having us here, hosting this, and putting names with faces is always a good thing. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I am Jeff Tennant. I was born over in Oklahoma. Don't hold that against me. Raised in Lincoln. But before I get into that, I'll just tell you that usually when I have a brother and sister-in-law here, we have something to eat, and we don't have that yet, I don't think. But that usually is what happens. So I actually have two of my brothers here, and lots of friends and family, and I appreciate them being here very much. They will know more stories about me than I can tell in 3 minutes. So if you don't, don't believe everything you hear. It is great to be here. When I was growing up in Lincoln, we had a father who was a dentist and a super mom, and we also farmed. I always said Dad he made money in dentistry to lose it in farming. We had broiler chickens, we had cattle, we had fruit trees, peaches and apples, and I grew up farming. Going to school in Lincoln, was in FFA, very involved in the FFA organization, and sports there, played all up and down the 62 corridor and all around the schools. We were in Gravette this morning, the three of us at 7 a.m. For a breakfast meeting, and I remember many victories and tough defeats at Gravette. But it's one of the reasons I'm running. I love this district. I grew up here, still have friends and a lot of family here. Our mother still lives here, actually just down the street in a rent house, or now it's a main house that Dad bought years ago. And many of us lived there to go to college. I got my Ag Econ degree here, took off and went to Washington, D.C., where I first became involved in governmental affairs with the National FFA organization, and went to Ronald Reagan's first inauguration. So that was when I really became ingrained. I was a Hammersmith Republican before I went. Some of you would remember John Paul. But then when I went to that inauguration, I became a Reagan Republican, and my conservative roots and values were in my DNA at that point. Later on in life, down in South Arkansas, in Stuttgart, Arkansas, I was communications manager for a big grain co-op. Ran as a Republican in South Arkansas in the 80s for state representative. People said if you'd run as a Democrat, you'd win. And I made a decision that I'd stay true to my colors, even though it was tempting.
30 seconds.
But I had some values that I wanted to preserve, and we made some great relationships in that run, including with Mike and Janet Huckabee. So I'm hopeful if Sarah's elected and I'm your state senator, that'll be a good relationship that we can have. I think we'll talk more about our platform when we get into the questions and answers, and I look forward to discussing those with you.
Thank you, sir. Last, we'll go to Representative McKenzie for your 3-minute opening.
Thank you. So I am Representative Gayla McKenzie, and I am in my second term. So I'm in my 4th year in the House of Representatives. Right now, I represent the Bella Vista, Gravette, surrounding towns, and a little bit of Bentonville and Centerton as well. So my husband, Lloyd McKenzie, is back there. We've been married 27 years. We have 2 daughters, both in their 20s. I graduated from Gravette High School. You know, the first speech I ever gave in high school was on Ronald Reagan, so you and I are old enough to be fans. Graduated from U of A with a degree in music education, and then graduated from the U of A Law School here in Fayetteville with my law degree. I'm still maintain my license, although I don't practice. I keep that license current. Owned and operated and programmed every single song for 27 years of KBVA, Variety, 106.5 radio. And I cried the day I sold it, and I didn't just cry a little, I cried a lot. Loved that with all my heart. Jumped right out of that into another small business, Ozark Stone Designs of Gravette. We manufacture stone veneer that goes on your houses, the facade, and the fireplaces. That's what we do now. Active in my church, very active in my school, active in my town. So I'm different. And I say this, and I try to back it up. And I'm a different kind of legislator, and I think we need different. We don't have enough different. And I'm different in the approach I take with my constituents. I'm different in the approach I take with bills. I am different in so many different ways. I believe we all say limited government. We don't practice it. During my first session, people came up to me and said, "How many bills are you sponsoring?" And my answer was 1. And the answer would be, "Oh, you'll get the hang of it." And it frustrated me because I thought, no, this is by design. I believe bills should be constituent driven. I believe you should know your bill inside and out. It is a shame to see people up there and they're just running a bill for somebody. I believe in my bill or I'm not going to run it. And I believe that you should take the approach to bills, you got to read them. How do you vote on something you don't know what's in it? And I get angry because we have way too many bills. And that's why we have disaster. That's why we have not limited government. And so I believe in taking a stand against a bill if it's a bad bill. I don't believe in being ugly about it, but I believe in being aggressive. I believe in reaching out to my constituents. I push information out to them, I think, in a way that is, I often will hear that's refreshing. I'll tell them how it's made, how the sausage is made, how they can help make a difference, try to give them a tool so that they feel engaged.
Thank you. We will now go to the first question. Representative McKenzie, we'll stick with you on this. Why did you decide to run for this position? Rerun for this position?
So, well, this is a new position for me. I am in the House right now, and this state Senate seat is significantly different. I lose most of the constituents that I represent right now, so I'm starting fresh. The people I represent right now, I don't really have to convince them that I'm accountable or that I'm transparent. But I'm starting over. I lose half the town of Gravett, and I lose Bella Vista, and I add an entire new area here, so I'm trying to get to know them. Although with Gravett, we've been playing pretty much every single one of these towns in sports for years. So I ran because in the House of Representatives, this is my first year to serve on the Education Committee. There are 20 members on the House Education Committee. And I would read the bills the night before, and I would think, well, this is a bad bill. This is crazy. I would reach out to my school board members and my administrators and my teachers and my parents, and I would get the same consensus. Yeah, it's a bad bill. And I would think, I won't have to speak against this. It'll fail. And they would routinely pass 19-1. And I would speak against them. And the frustration, I would think to myself, this bill isn't going to move, this is not going to improve our scores, this is not going to improve education. What it will do is make it busier, and we can brag that we passed a bill. So the point of this is, in the Senate, only 35 members. The Senate Education Committee, in practice, you've got 5 or 6 members there because they're out running their bills. You can make a difference, a much bigger difference. And if you're going to take a stand, and if you're going to actually try to stop a lot of this and stand for the things that are good, I believe that's what we need in this Senate, is somebody who's seen what needs to be done, has shown they're willing to take the stand, has shown they're willing to take a hard stand, and will actually reach out to their constituents, bring them alongside, and help them be involved in the process to beat some of these bills, because that's what we did. And it was wonderful. We had some losses, and I say we because we started networking throughout the state, teachers, parents, administrators. And when they would watch, I'd tell them, watch us on session, and that was eye-opening for them. But when they would sometimes have a victory, when we would actually be able to kill a bill that they really believed was just going to mire us down more or put in things that the parents didn't want, to see the response from the parents of saying, wow, we made a difference. So in the world of discouragement with politics, rightfully earned, it's good to give people tools to show how they can really make a difference. That's why I'm running for the Senate.
Thank you. Tyler, we'll go to you next for that same question. Why did you decide to run for this position?
First and foremost, I want to honor the Lord. I want to filter everything through my relationship with Him and through a biblical worldview. And so that's the utmost highest calling for me, is I want to make sure I'm representing the Lord well in my walk with Him. And so everything, every bill, every conversation, every handshake, every door knock, that's the first thing that comes to my mind, is how can I point other people to conservative values and to things that I'm aligned with a biblical worldview perspective. I can also tell you that it's been so encouraging to connect with so many folks about the frustrations. I'm running for the people who are tired of career politicians who tell us how to live our lives and how to run our businesses and get into the weeds and yell and scream and the noise that's being going on, instead of representing the frustrations that they're dealing with day to day. I'm running for the agriculture community. We have a very rural side. Part of our country, part of our district is very rural. Over on the western side, part of our state, and I want to make sure they're well represented. I'm running because conservative values are worth fighting for. These are the things that we've got parental rights. We've got parents that are being silenced in our schools, and that's not right. we've got businesses that are having over-regulation and licensure problems that is hampering the growth in our area. All of these things, there's so many things that people are telling me that, Tyler, will you please go fight for us over here? We don't feel like we are very well represented. These are the things that I love to stand up for. And I would probably say if the very first bill I would love to push would be a pro-life bill, one that abolishes abortion. I'm so excited when I see what's going on with our Supreme Court, that what could be coming through. And I'm excited to be able to say that Arkansas, we are finally going to be able to move in a direction that some of our nearby states have done. I'm excited to see what happens in the Texas heartbeat bill that's been passed, and Oklahoma recently passed it. I would like us to continue to move in that direction. So conservative values, representing our district well, and making sure that our voice has great representation for economic development and for conservative values.
Thank you. Jeff, we'll go to you now for that same question. Why did you decide to run for this position?
Thanks, Taylor. It's a good question. I guess before I ran and filed, my question was, should I run, and why should I run? And my friends and family asked me the same thing. In fact, some said, you should run because we need good people in Little Rock, and I had a couple that say, are you crazy for running? You got other things you can do. It is a calling. It was a matter of prayer for me as well, and a matter of a lot of listening to people who have been in political office or served in some way in political life. That included legislators from Little Rock that I was either a state FFA officer with or otherwise. But anywhere I've ever gone, I've tried to get involved in things with a purpose, that have a purpose for me. I also have tended to be a fixer when I've gone to work at companies or start businesses or work in businesses. In fact, now I'm back here happily working with my parents' business and helping them manage that. My mom's 88 years old and wants to retire a little bit or back off, if you can imagine that. So that is a purpose that I have fully embraced. But at the same time, when the district was redrawn, and I saw the opportunity there, it just looked like home to me. From Sulphur Springs to Morrowtown, and then from the 62 corridor, Weddington, even the church where I was married, out on Mount Comfort Road is in my district of all things. So it feels like home. It feels like a place where I want to work and do good things. I've said that we all know that Arkansas is a land of opportunity. I see District 35. If you know the boundaries and where it is, it's the land of emerging opportunity. And y'all here in Fayetteville with City Council and Chamber, the great partnerships you have done a great job building up this town and what's happening here. But the progress that's here is moving west. And there are towns out west like Lincoln, Gentry, Gravette, Siloam, those places. A lot of those places there's work to do. They need a revitalization in downtown. There's in my three pillars of work would be business development and recruitment. I'd love to work with folks to get new and better jobs in industries that are across the district, even in hometowns like Lincoln. With that comes education and training, and maybe innovational training. When I was in school, we had
30
vocational
seconds.
training for people who left Lincoln High and went to become welders and auto mechanics and carpenters and such. I think it was at Ramey Junior High at the time. Now Northwest Institute is doing similar things. I think we need more of that. I have trouble finding good help in Gentry for our workforce housing over there. And finally, excellence in healthcare. I've been involved in healthcare with dying loved ones that have transitioned and moved on to higher places, and I have a passion for that, and I think that needs to be here for retention and other reasons.
Thank you, sir. We'll now go to the next question. We'll stick with you on this one. Describe your experience working within your community. What is your leadership style? Jeff.
I would say servant leadership style, hands-on. I worked for an Australian group for a while, and they called it muck on the boots. You might call it dirt on the hands, but I think it's important to dive in and to understand your constituents, your delegates, your employees. I've always managed businesses that way and led in anything that way that I've done. I've been privileged to lead an HOA back in Raleigh, North Carolina, where where I worked in business for a bunch of years. 300 home HOAs. It was bigger than a lot of towns in my district. And learn in those cases, you get actually to vote on whether you want a dues or tax increase. Wouldn't that be nice? Our people in Arkansas don't get to vote on that. We're the ones that have to take that responsibility on as your representatives in Little Rock to work on those taxes. So I would say servant leadership would be number one. Getting involved with my people and listening really hard to what they're all about. I find synergy in teamwork and in family. Understanding issues. I like to overanalyze an issue, but it's something that I feel like I'm in a position in life now that I can take on and still work in my business over in Gentry.
Thank you, sir. Representative McKenzie, we'll go to you for that same question. Describe your experience working within your community. What is your leadership style?
So I'm very active in my community and have been since I think the very first time I spoke in front of the Gravette School Board, the City Council. I can't remember which one I did first. I was in my early 20s. So I've been very active and involved. And as a representative, the mayors, they know they're going to hear from me. I'm not just going to wait to hear from them on a bill. I'm going to reach out to them for their input on how it's going to impact them, all the way down with my superintendents and all the way across the board with my constituents. And in Little Rock, what I have found, again, I'm shy on those bills. I don't want to run a bunch of bills, but when I run one, I believe in it. And I'll work hard to, the last bill I ran this session was going to go before the judiciary. It's going to impact attorneys and judges and, of course, constituents too. And it was a constituent-driven bill. But what I did was I went to everybody. I went to the Arkansas Bar Association. I went to the Judicial Council. And I went to, of course, I'd already talked with a considerable amount of constituents why we had this issue, how we needed to fix it. But I went to each one and back and forth. This is what I'm thinking about. What are your thoughts? Tell me where it's bad. Tell me what I did wrong. Tell me how this is going to play out. And worked it over. So by the time we got to where it's time to present the bill, I felt really good about it, and so did they. In fact, I was kind of disappointed when I presented it before committee because I was wanting more questions on it. So that's the way I approach my style, whether it's working with my community, pushing the information out, being involved, engaging with them every step of the process, and in the legislature, when it's time to work on a bill or defeat a bill. But be knowledgeable, work with all the different entities, and you will have a much better product.
Thank you. Tyler, we'll go to you for that same question. Describe your experience working within your community. What is your leadership style?
You know, I talked on a few of those before. You know, it's for me, this was a prayerful decision. You know, having a heart out for our community is important. And so, talked about the Chamber of Commerce, small business owners. I've got a real heart for those. You know, folks who are, it's tough. It's tough starting something from scratch and trying to make sure that you've got support in a community. So that a heart for serving in that area on the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. Children Advocacy Center, talked about that. We've got, this is going on right in our backyard about families that have gone through abuse and having a place for them to deal with that and work through that. And then I talked about coaching, but you know, serving in our church as well. But I want to make sure that I talk about leadership style. You asked about that. For me, I think of the phrase radical candor. I want relationship-driven conversation. I think just a tone and an openness and an ability for folks to feel like they can relate with you and they can connect with you. I think that's important. And so I tell folks, I was speaking to a group at our team at Simmons, and I said, I want us to be inefficient with our relationships. And what I mean by that is we're all about efficiencies and eliminating waste in our business, and that's how we're trained. That's a good thing. In fact, that's how I would want to lead from a legislative budget perspective. But in a business side, right, that's how we lead. But from a relational standpoint, I want the exact opposite. I don't want to hustle through a conversation or make you feel like that we have to hurry through a conversation. I want to take our time and slow down and connect. That's inefficient relationship, but it's actually so much deeper. So radical candor, complete connectivity, whenever we think there's being communication done and there's actually not being connection done. That's the leadership style I would like to bring. And so we can actually get things done because you build trust. A trusting relationship is the most important style of leadership. And it all comes from a humility servant's heart.
Thank you. And we'll stay with you for this next question. What do you believe to be the largest challenge facing your district in the next 2 years? Sure.
So so that would be a relatively short-term perspective. So in a 2-year term, what I'm hearing from folks is they're struggling to go fill up their tank with gas. We have a heavy inflation that's going on right now, and it's impacting a burden right now. They're deciding, do we get this grocery item, or do I fill up gas? And so these are very serious short-term issues that our district is facing with. And so when I see that, when I hear that, my response, I would love to be an advocate for that situation specifically by saying, we've got to put dollars back in your pocket, Arkansas. We've got to be able to reduce the tax rate, especially on sales tax. You know, we could talk about we have a surplus as well. Because of this inflation side, we have over $1 billion surplus that's going on. I would like to see us, when I see that, I think, goodness, we are way overtaxing our people. Let's put those dollars back in the pockets of Arkansas. We need to reduce the tax rate because that's also going to expand an economic growth. That's going to say a consumer is going to have more confidence to go out and say, okay, I don't feel the burden as much. I can actually go invest back in my business. I can actually go back, fill up my tank of gas. I don't have that stress that's going on. I'd say that's a big issue right now in a short-term perspective. I'd also say there's a cultural battle going on. We have parents that feel like they are afraid of what's being taught in their schools. There's a cultural moral value, I think, there that is up for fighting for. We've got folks at school boards, I think parents are feeling like they can't go and ask questions about what's in the curriculum and what their kids are being taught. I'd say those are the two things that I think about are most important for folks in our district.
Thank you. Jeff, we'll go to you for that same question. What do you believe to be the largest challenge facing your district in the next 2 years?
I think that was answered, Taylor, by the University of Arkansas last year when they did their annual study on the issues that most people are worried about losing sleep over, and those are traditionally and typically the economy, healthcare, and education, although this past year people also said that politics and politicians were bothering them as much as any of those other three. So we have something to do about that. We can affect that. And I've had farmers who have said to me, you know, we just need somebody to listen to us and go to Little Rock and use some common sense. And I would agree with that. I would also throw in, though, that you've got to use a little bit of imagination with the common sense, because we have some emerging issues, some big issues here. We are so blessed in this area. It's so blessed that we have a near $1 billion surplus in our state, and we're projecting one for next year. So when it comes to the economy, I think that you know, people, when you get down to the grassroots, I was by Witcher's truck stop after our Gravette, that's in Decatur, after our Gravette meeting. Diesel fuel is $5.50 a gallon. I don't know what y'all are paying to fill up your tanks, but that's expensive for farmers and people that have diesel trucks, and it gets a little better gas mileage, but it's still a big hit. Everything in the grocery store has gone up. A lot of our costs are going up, and I know that the Fed and others are trying to quell inflation, but those are hitting people hard. So with you know, in a state where we're third in the nation in state and local income tax, we need to take a hard look at that. I applaud the governor's the legislative mandate to reduce our state income tax rate in a trickle down process. We may want to look at accelerating that. We may want to look at some tax credits. Try to give people some relief with that $1 billion that the government didn't produce for us. We produced it because of our GDP in Arkansas, the way that we produce goods and services and the productivity in this state, and especially up here in Northwest Arkansas. So I think the economy is a big one. We can work on that. Healthcare certainly is. I think people coming out of a pandemic era, People have been worried about their friends and family. I know I've lost loved ones to COVID. Many of you have as well. People are worried about the cost of health care, and we have to look at that very, very hard as well, do what we can on a state basis. And then finally, education. Again,
30 seconds.
I think we need to continue to look at our educational structures. I'm a product of a small high school. Many of you may be as well. But again, I think there's always a better way to skin the cat in education. Costs of education continue to increase in Arkansas. We are investing in education and need to continue to do that. I think there's a lot on the state level we can do with those three big ones, including the politics and the politicians in Little Rock.
Thank you, sir. Representative McKenzie, we'll go to you next. Same question. What do you believe to be the largest challenge facing your district in the next 2 years?
Well, I certainly acknowledge, and if you go door to door, like we all are, no question, all those things, but that's a statewide issue, I believe. I think it's a nationwide issue. Everyone agrees inflation is stifling. Everybody, I think, across the state of Arkansas realizes we have problems in education. Boy, I'll echo that, and I hope I get a chance to talk about that more. No question, the $1 billion surplus, got to manage that, and we've got to manage the tax reform, the response to that, because we need it. We know the sales tax. We know the income tax. We know we need other changes on that. So those, to me, though, are not separate to just District 35. That's something across the state that we need to address. When I look at just as a District 35 levels, I'm looking at District 35, if I'm going to represent them. When you drive District 35, and we know here in Northwest Arkansas, we have such a different set of issues we're facing than other parts of the state. Here, growth is a huge issue. The infrastructure needs because of that. And when I speak to people throughout here, of course, they all recognize the growth issue, and with it comes the good and the bad. And of course, they all say the same thing is, we just don't want it to change. We know that the growth is coming in, and we know it's going to change the population, all these different things, but what we don't want is when the folks are leaving the areas they're leaving to come here for the good that we have, we don't want them to bring the bad ideas that they left. So that's certainly something that we need to weigh and consider and adapt accordingly to those principles to make sure that when we grow, that we are still maintaining what makes us so attractive to those wanting to move here. With regard to the infrastructure, no question, the growth is coming to this part of the county, to this part, our district right here. You can look, the growth is coming, and it's coming fast. And so how are we going to respond to that? And so I know with just even my district on 92, the growth issues that we have had, the important thing, working with the mayors, working with the city councils, working with your administration of the school, but even as important, if not more so, because they often get left out, is making sure that the constituents, the people living in that district, have a voice, and they are helping shape and being a part of the dialogue of how we're going to handle this growth,
30
how we're
seconds.
going to pay for it. Making sure they have a voice and pushing that information out. It's so sad when you see them be the last ones to know what's going to happen. Someone's going to plan this. We know that. Someone's going to plan for the growth. Are we going to make sure that the people paying for that growth have a voice early on, not bless this now that what we've decided how it's going to be?
Thank you. And we'll stay with you for this next question. What kind of economic development projects do you hope your district will take on in the next year?
Okay, well, I kind of touched on that a little bit, didn't I? So, obviously, I've already talked about some of the growth and how important it is to engage people in that. I also think when I look about, there's so many things that go under economic development. But our small businesses, which are the heart of our communities, all these communities that are growing, they're struggling so much right now. And so, now this again is on a statewide level here, but certainly with the growth that's coming here in our district and across this portion of the state, I hear from constituents over and over and over again, it is so hard. Arkansas makes it too hard to get licensed, to stay licensed, to jump through these hoops. And even though we had the Red Tape Reduction Act, what I'm learning in practice and in rules and regs, in some ways, we just wrapped it up with a little bit more red tape. And people are frustrated, and they want to give up because the small businesses, with everything else they have, the inflation, it impacts them so much more, I believe, than sometimes your big business. They've got the cushion, and sometimes they do quite well. But your small businesses, especially after riding the freight train that COVID was, and now trying to work their way through this inflation and the labor shortages, all the things that are piling up on our small businesses. So I think on a state level, we need to be serious about it. We really need to not just pass a little bill, see what happens in rules and regs, and then say to them when we hear from our constituents, this is stifling. I can't get licensed here. I can't get through this red tape. And the answer is for them, well, we can't fix it for 2 more years until we get back into session. That is so hard. So the state has really got to, I believe, get its tentacles out of a lot of these things so that the economic development that we need from those small businesses who are giving up, throwing up their hands in the air, be a voice for them.
Thank you. Tyler, we'll go to you for that same question. What kind of economic development projects do you hope your district to take on in the next year?
When I think about this, I think about small business and supporting small business owners. And then I actually think about affordable housing. Let's go there first. If we don't have affordable housing, people can't actually start thinking about how they can invest in their own businesses, grow their teams, provide more services and goods, until the entire economic development kind of stifles. And so for me, I think about, we've got about $1 billion, another bucket from federal dollars from the rescue plan that are earmarked for infrastructure, earmarked for broadband and water and sewer. We've got to make sure we're using that and getting continue to get our fair share from the federal support, so we're not using state dollars, to make sure we are building for that growth. And that's actually going to help the affordable housing side. This is a big stress for people. These are folks that are seeing rents increasing higher and higher. There's interest rates that are making it really hard for folks to go find housing options because of limited supply. And so if we can help on the infrastructure side, that's actually going to start helping on economic development side. And then on small business side, I mentioned it before. I've got a guy comes up to me and says, I can't believe in a town like Siloam Springs, about 20,000 people, it's about 20 to 30 miles away for the closest in-home elderly health care service. And it's because of some licensures and some coverage area issues. They want to start a business tomorrow, but can't do it over in that area. When you look at a same size community across the border in Oklahoma, they've got 5 similar services in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. These are the type of things that we are stifling the growth of small business owners and the ability to make it so hard. I want to make it hard for government to grow. I don't want to make it hard for businesses to grow. That's what I want to go represent for us over there. And so these are the things I think about: affordable housing development and using the infrastructure dollars, especially from a federal perspective, to get our share there, keeping our taxes low, and then making sure that we are supporting through eliminating or reducing the regulation for small business owners.
Thank you. Jeff, we'll go to you now for that same question. What kind of economic development projects do you hope your district will take on in the next year?
This is one area where I do think small. Normally, you're always taught to think big, but I think in our district, we can think small and be progressive with that. By that I mean small business. Not necessarily small farmers, small farms, but small business needs support. And we need to first, though, in my work in life, in my career in business, we always started out with what we called a SWOT analysis. And I'd like to work with the cities and towns and people in our area that want the appropriate types of economic growth in the district. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You just go, you take a hard look at what you have to offer. We all know this is a great place to live and work, but what can we offer other people to develop economic projects in towns like Lincoln Cane Hill and Gentry, Gravett, Siloam. What can we market? And you have to start with who you are. You have to find out who you are first and what you have to offer. So I'd like to work with folks like you, Taylor, on these economic projects. We can all have these lofty goals, but if those goals don't fit our needs and fit the strengths and the strengths that we can offer as a district, then we wind up chasing rabbits. We wind up with the possibility of economic projects, the economic development projects that aren't going anywhere. So I think we have to take a hard look at ourselves first, and then we have to market that aggressively. We have to decide who we are, what we want, what we need. If it's downtown revitalization, I know Gentry just went through a facade upgrade. It created all kinds of excitement, and the Chamber and Janey Parks led that effort. So on, if you can look at some downtown buildings that have been redeveloped, just in the facade, it excites people. We had 50 people at a meeting the other night getting excited about downtown revitalization for Gentry. We need that for Gravett. We need that for Lincoln. Siloam Springs has done a great job of that with really hard work and coalitions and thinking about what they can offer. So I think from that standpoint, I would be excited about that because I think I can best use my skill set in that regard, the skills that I've built up with training here at the university, and then starting a small business, running a national agribusiness, and now back to running a family business, which also includes workforce housing.
30 seconds.
One of our other brothers is working on a project in Gentry right now that is subsidized, if you will, rent for folks who are working hard, and we applaud people to work, but if they're having trouble making ends meet with the rent and the mortgage that they have to pay, it's tough to say that you've done them any favors at that point. So we're actually working on that in Gentry as we speak.
Thank you, sir. Last, Representative McKenzie, same question. What kind of economic development projects do you hope your district will take on in the next year? I believe, no, we already got to you. Yeah,
Say,
we're good.
obviously, I wasn't very memorable.
Not at all. All right.
See if you say the same thing twice.
Through on my list now. So actually at this point, if we have any questions from the audience, this would be a good opportunity to do that before we go to the closing statements. I know we're kind of running low on time with 3 candidates, but if anyone has a pressing question, feel free to raise your hand.
So I've asked this to every group we've had before us this week, and we've had several. But before I ask the question, I want to make one statement on behalf of our chamber. We thank you, each of you personally, for running for office. We know it's a sacrifice. We know it's a lot of hard work. But to offer yourself for public service is most important. To have good candidates is most important, and you all represent good candidates. We also know that Fayetteville is a very small portion of your district, but to us, your being here is very important to us. Though we may not be a large number of votes, we're a large number of talkers, and we tell people what we hear and see, and what we think about it, and do our best to express that for influencing the process as it works. So you honor us by being here. We're excited to let you know that, again, this was broadcast live, and it's being recorded, so there will be a link. We'll give you that link, and so you can use it any way you want to for your campaign, or for people that are asking about your campaign, to tell them to connect and be a part of it as if they were here. Technology has helped us extend our reach, and we're pleased that we can. The question is, there are 35 senators, as Representative McKenzie has pointed out, and 100 House members, as she has pointed out. Very little gets done in either chamber, at least not without 51 votes in the House and 18 votes in the Senate. And you can have the best of all ideas, but you got to get 18 votes. And if you got all the votes in Northwest Arkansas, you still wouldn't have. So coalition building becomes an important part of that process. Have any of you given any thought to how you will approach building coalitions and relationships with your fellow senators and comment about things that can be beneficial for Arkansas and beneficial for Northwest Arkansas? And we're interested in knowing that because, as many of you, all of you have said, we're very blessed, and we're much more blessed than some areas of our state. So for what seems to be important to us, in some areas of our state seems impossible to even consider. building coalitions in that kind of setting is difficult. So have you given any thought to it, and if you have, what is your plan?
Jeff, we'll start with you.
I actually reached out, I mentioned this earlier, to some legislators. Steve, good question. To ask about not only could I do the job properly. I've always believed if I'm going to apply for a job, I need to be ready and suited for the job. And I was told that when you first get there, you'll find some folks. You'll find some folks that can become sort of your posse, if you will, your group that you'll naturally gravitate to. And I've always found that in anything I've ever done in business, and I've been in part of organizations leadership, and in business you do the same things. Someone mentioned earlier, relationships are important. It's certainly important to me and my family, and I have people up here that will certainly hold me accountable for what I do, and give me good ideas and feedback. If I didn't, I don't know if I'd be doing this, because I'm beholden to them. And then a daughter and a son-in-law and a grandson, even though he's only 2, he won't be, someday he'll want to know why Grandpa did that and this and the other. But I think it's important too. I'm a listener. When I first went into this, our pastor down at Central here in Fayetteville preached about how Solomon got so wise, and the answer was he listened to his people. God said, listen to your people first, and you'll gain wisdom. And that's what he did, and he became, it was what the Bible describes as the wisest man ever in history, was a wise king. Now, we're not going down there to be kings. We're going down to be delegates and representatives. And so I want to be a loud voice for the area that I love. But again, these relationships that I've developed over the years with people like Mike and Janet Huckabee, I hope come back to help us up here. It looks like their daughter may get elected governor. Even if she doesn't, I'm sure she'll be influential. So I build my work, always have, around relationships, good, bad, or ugly. And then if they're ugly, I try to fix them. And that's the fixer-upper in me, the DIYer, you might say. And I know, Steve, we're all different. And I've lived all over this state, or lived in different areas of the state. And so I know the challenges are different, the opportunities are different, but in the end, we're all Arkansans, and that's what we want to do, is make the state better while we make the district better. And it would be a privilege to try and make that work together happen.
Thank you, sir. Representative McKenzie.
So obviously I have a record on this, and I'm known as somebody who'll take some hard stands. And when you do, and I'll ask some hard questions, and when you do that, the fear might be, justifiably so, well, is that going to make it harder for her to push any legislation along? And that's the problem with politics. If that's the mentality you take, then you're not going to get the stands that need to be taken for people. So I'll go ahead and take the hard stands on a bill. I'll go ahead and ask those hard questions because they need to be done. But what I will also do is I'll treat people fairly before, during, and after the fact. And what a legislator said to me on my first session after about 3 months, looked at me and said, I guess it was just after the fact, he said, we have the board up there where all the votes go up there. And he says, I don't look for certain people. I know certain people are always going to vote this way. I always know certain people are always going to vote this way. There's no bother. I don't look for them. I always look to see what your vote's going to be, because I never really know. And it can be, sometimes you'll hang out there by yourself, but he said, I always have learned that you have a reason behind the vote that you'd make. And I say that because what that tells legislators is, I'll listen to your bill. And they've learned, I've got a shot with her. I've got a shot with whatever we're trying to do. She's going to listen. She's going to give it a fair shake. So even though you take those hard stands, you can still work with people. And if you're civil and they know that your hard stand's not personal, it's based in conviction and it's based in principle, and I'm not going to take it with me 1 minute after that hard stand. And if they know I'm going to give you my word and I'm going to tell you the same thing to your face that I'm going to say behind your back, it works with people. And so I want to encourage legislators, take those hard stands. Don't be ugly about it. You can still pass legislation and and move things along, and we're all the better for it when we'll go ahead and live by those convictions and principles.
Thank you. Last, for Mr. Clark's question, we'll go to you, Tyler.
Yes, this actually really excites me. You know, I mentioned a little bit about this before, but let me tell you this. I think I was the last one to announce that we were running. And that, honestly, had to do a lot with Megan and I praying about, God, are you really calling us? No, really. Are you really calling us? No, our whole family, are you calling us to this? And we really want to make sure had clear conscience on that and clear direction there. But what was happening was, that was interesting. After we announced we were running, had so many people reach out and said, I'm so glad you're running. I know that you will represent us well. That was from our district. And then what was interesting is I had folks that serve over in Little Rock call me. Tyler, I think you can do a great job over here. Every time we've connected with you, you actually listen, you connect, you are a team builder. And that's what I do. Not only on the basketball court, growing up, not only in coaching, but that's what I do at Simmons. You cannot sell to customers by pushing an agenda or pushing one way of perspective. You have to add value, and you have to find solutions. And that's what we do. You have to do it internally, you have to do it externally, cross departments, cross-functionally. And so that really excites me. I really believe that I would be a great representative for us over in Little Rock. I can fight for the conservative values, for the morals and the values and the strong things that we care about. At the same time, can also build true connections and relationship-driven conversation. I believe that's a very possible outcome with me being your state senator. And so I was so excited about that. When we were praying about running, I called sitting House members and Senate members, and I said, hey, tell me how this really is. Tell me how it is on your family. Tell me how the day-to-day is like. Okay, now tell me what it's like in Little Rock. And as we started to unpack that, I got fired up. I started saying, Lord, this is how you've built me. These are the skill sets you've given me. This is the background, the training from master's degrees and education side, also from just the natural connection ability that I believe I could bring for this. So yes, Steve, I have been excited about this. I've been just as excited as I am to fight for the conservative values that I believe are so true. I'm excited about the ability to be able to connect with the other representatives of across the state to make sure we're finding solutions that make sense and that really move Arkansas forward. So absolutely excited about this. Yeah.
Thank you. This time, we'll now go to our final closing statements. We'll go ahead and reverse the order from how we started with it. And looks like I've got Tyler as opening. So Tyler, you'll close. And Representative McKenzie, you'll start us off.
So, as I led with, I believe I'm different. And we need it. We need different in the legislature. So many can be so much the same. And we need somebody who will take the hard stands, who will actually read the bills, not just the title or not just look at the sponsor. Somebody who will ask the hard questions, and somebody who is constituent focused, somebody who's not afraid of losing. We need that. Too many decisions are made, the hard ones. Well, this may hurt my chances to be reelected. I might not win. I might get a primary opponent if I take this stand. The fear, it doesn't serve the people well. I had a job before I got here. I have a job now outside of the legislature, and I'll have a job when I'm done. I don't want to be in Little Rock if I'm not going to make a difference. And I mean by making a true difference if I'm not going to be the voice for the people that I represent. I've taken a few hard stands, and I've told people it's a long walk back sometimes from the well of the house to that chair. But when you get back to that chair and someone emails you, even if it's not your constituent, just someone who watches regularly and says, I'm not your constituent, but I watched what you just said. Thank you for speaking up for me. It's about time someone did. That's what we need. That's what I'm there to do. I believe we need different.
Thank you. I know I said you'll go last, but that'll leave Jeff kind of in the middle each time, so I'll go ahead and have you go next.
Okay.
Mine. Yeah.
I'm so thankful to be here. I'm so thankful to be able to have the opportunity to represent our awesome district. It's a joy. It is a joy. It's a joy to get to think about fighting for the things that people care about. And I don't think people want different. They want effective, to be honest. I think they want effective in fighting for the things that they care about. That's what I believe. And when I want to make sure that everybody knows that I want to filter every conversation, every bill, every knock, like I said, on the door, talking through. Everything I want to filter through my relationship with the Lord and through a biblical worldview. And I know that will put us in the right direction. I also think that it's important that people are heard. I think it's important that people are know that you're approachable and that you're real. You've been serving in your community for a long time. Some people like to think that, because you haven't ever served in the government and have been a politician, that you shouldn't be a representative. And I disagree with that. In fact, I've had more people say, "Oh, thank you. We've got not another career politician." That's been the pulse. And so I'm so excited. I'm so excited for the opportunity to fight for the things that are needed to be represented well on our side, from our district. And so, when I read the Arkansas State Constitution, it says, "We, the people of the state of Arkansas, grateful to the God Almighty for the rights and privileges to choose our own form of government, for civil liberties and religious freedoms, do ordain this Constitution." If it's not constitutional, if it doesn't filter through that, that in the Bible is our guiding light. I want to remind Little Rock that we care about that. We want to get back to that culture, one that is God-honoring and that also limits our government and lets us truly have our freedoms. These are the things that I would love to represent us well with over there. I want to be an effective leader for you. So thank you for letting me have the opportunity. I would love to be your senator. If you have any questions for me, please reach out.
Thank you. And last, we'll go to Jeff for his final statement.
Thanks, Taylor. First of all, thank you all for being here, and for those listening in, please vote. Go vote on early voting starts May the 9th. May the 24th is our primary voting day. Arkansas doesn't rate very high nationally in primary voting. In fact, we're among the last, so please go vote. Research us, pray about it, think about it, look at us all in a critical lens and decide who you want your next senator to be. I would offer that my deep roots here, I think, will help me do a great job for you in Little Rock, and then do a great job when I come back here as well, just to go to events, relate to folks, be available throughout the year. There's committee meetings, there's events, there's lots of opportunities for state senators to gather information and then act appropriately on that information and really represent your constituency. So I would offer you my years of experience in business as a CEO of a company, of an agribusiness, as a fellow who started a business, ran my own business for a bunch of years, got really tired and sold it to a bigger business, wound up running that business and building it into a national agri-media business. And then finally, the great privilege as well as opportunity to come back here and put my name in the hat, apply for this job, if you will. So it's an opportunity and a privilege, and I would just draw on that skill set that I have to do a great job as state senator to try and address the challenges and the opportunities as well that we have here in District 35. I think it's important that we draw on our life experiences. I've also had those in healthcare. I was able to see a wife off to heaven who had ovarian cancer, stayed with her through home hospice, had experience with that. People across the district are involved with that. Our own dad was in the veterans home. Our father, Dr. Forrest Tennant, who eventually succumbed to COVID pneumonia. We were privileged to see him off as well. So those are tough times, but they build a fiber and they inform and they teach. And so I think I'm uniquely suited to provide the people of this district and this Senate job with the skill set needed, the time and availability and love for this district needed to learn and to lead. and the experiences as a lifelong conservative family man and businessman to back it up. So I would appreciate your consideration and your vote, May 24th.
Thank you, sir. Round of applause for our candidates tonight. Thank you so much for taking times out of your busy schedules to come and join us tonight. I know all of our viewers online and everyone that will watching after will appreciate you taking the time to come out here and speak with us. So thank you so much, and good luck on your campaigns. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. We'll see you at the next forums.